Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the PLM Green Global Alliance, talking with PLM vendors, service partners about their sustainability mission, their offerings and experiences from the field. Today, I'm joined by my PLM Green partner, Klaus Brettschneider, and we are talking again with Erik Rieger and Rafal Witkowski from PSC Transition Technologies. We spoke a year ago with them related to their PLM Green offering, and now we are curious what happened since. But first of all, please introduce yourself, Erik, Rafal, and tell us what your connection is to sustainability. Erik, I give you the stage.
Yeah, thank you, Josh. I'm very happy to be with you today, and I'm very happy to give you some update about our experiences from last year. Just as a quick intro of myself, so I'm working for PSC since the last 2 years. I was very much engaged in PM activities with PTC for 26 years before, and as of today, basically, I'm taking care about the product engineering portfolio for PSC.
Okay.
Rafal.
Hello, thanks for having us. So my name is Rafal Witkowski, and I'm in PSC 18 years. My background is software engineering, and I'm involved in product lifecycle management solutions pretty much since the beginning. Now I'm a part of PLM practice when we are focusing on industrial sustainability, when we are trying to help our customers with the sustainability requirements, sustainability challenges. So that's my main mission at the moment.
Okay, good. And then, let's start from last year. Maybe, Erik, what has changed when we talked about that time about Green PLM? And I think there is some movement over there.
Yes, there's a lot of movement, but in particular, there's a lot of gathering new experiences, further observations and further insights into this area. But might be, Rafal, talk first about our scope change and what we had in mind from last year, and then I come back to some specific examples.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, you might actually notice the name change. So we have changed from Green PLM to EcoPLM. We actually thought that EcoPLM, it's much more focused on products. Because what we are doing, our main customers are product-specific customers that build and produce products. So we thought that actually EcoPLM, it's closer to products and also closer to eco-design, and this is the areas that we are trying to help.
So then I continue. So basically, what's hot off the press right now, I just returned from a customer 2 days ago. We had a larger workshop, so we engaged over the last month with a customer, and that's a first-tier automotive supplier. We had a workshop 2 days ago about basically presenting the solution and ready to roll it out now in MVP status, let's call it this way. And I tried to capture a snapshot from our learnings from the last year. By the way, which I also will present at the Green PLM conference mid-November, which is taking place together with the customer. So we are right now working on gathering what we have seen and what is the observation in this context. So you're pretty much welcome to join us for this Green PLM conference in Berlin. As a quick summary of what I learned and what we have seen in the past, it's of course one thought about technology, and we are at the beginning of a journey, to be honest, but I try to capture this along people, process and technology. So let's start with my observations from the people perspective.
You're mentioning a lot of points, huh? I mean, in a few sentences, you're talking about a customer experience where you really start to work on. We talked about the focus on EcoPLM. You talked about the conference coming. So let's go through them one by one. And of course, what is the type of offering you're giving to your customers? Let's start from there. Huh? Yeah.
So basically, right now, our offering, and we are working with the customer, starting the journey of the culture of transforming to sustainable product and development, which includes, and basically starts small, I think big starts small, which includes and start with introducing sustainable eco-design in the early design phases. So it really starts with gathering after the first product idea, establishing guidelines, what should be in the product. It continues with then really seriously making design, creating product structure, but also having in CAD already material assignments and keeping in mind at this point in time already what is the sustainable or impact on sustainability if we make a change to the product and if we start to design, which introduces and includes also, of course, access to material database already in design phase, enabling the designer really to have a view and monitor and make sustainability impact transparent.
And this design support, is it based on material usage, carbon emissions expected, or?
Yes, so basically in our case, or for this specific examples, having direct access to material database, we have implemented for the ANSYS Quantum I database, will extend the scope, but also one of the learnings was, of course, to make sure that we have the right data available. So what we learned about, there are also some site-specific data which needs to be adjusted. There are some company-specific data which needs to be taken into account, and there are some generic data, and it includes all of them. So one of the anecdote what I learned when we talk to designers, it makes a difference basically if you have a manufacturing method being applied in Asia or in Germany, and even this has to be taken into account. Mm-hmm. But coming back to the overall scope, right now we have enabled designers to really have sustainable carbon footprint monitored during design, during making CAD changes, having direct access from CAD to material database, and then bring this to the EBOM, and from there to roll up all this information to the entire sustainability.
Okay.
So Erik, if I understand this right, you're not taking basically the information, the carbon footprint from the company to break it down to the products. You really take it from the material database.
Yes, that is correct. And one of the learnings was, of course, again, we have standard material databases, but we have to make sure it's consistent with the existing material database, which are, of course, in the company available already.
And then you are basically roll the information or the carbon footprint, for example, up to the assembly, sub-assembly, and assembly level.
Exactly. So that goes, we have, based on our architecture, we have our CAD system, we have material database, we have the PLM system, which is Windchill in this case, of course. And then on top, we have our EcoPLM application, which pulls the data out and present this in the right format to the designer as in a rolled up mentality. So it also allows a comparison between variants, which was also a critical outcome from discussion like 2 days ago. It is really critical. It also enables you to have a kind of traffic light indication how far you're away. Another critical aspect which was indicated 2 days ago was to have the kind of transparency. What are the most influencing components of a product to the sustainability?
And you said it's not just carbon. I assume you pull other data like water consumption and biodiversity and this kind of things as well?
So for the time being, we focus on carbon footprint.
Okay.
But our EcoPLM solution takes into account all the parameters and all activities. Mm-hmm. So that's for the time right now. Starting introduction, we start with carbon footprint. For the future, we have in mind that this needs to be extended to all parameters which are to be considered here.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. And interesting, I think also, I know where your question comes from, Klaus. So in one way, we have the design assumptions and databases, and then we have the reality where we have to benchmark against the plans later once we start manufacturing our products.
Yeah.
Yes, in fact, this was also a big discussion 2 days ago, to be honest. So in the early phases of design, you have only some rough assumptions, and you should be enabled to enter the rough assumptions at the beginning and to replace it by really calculated value later on along the process.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we also overthink this. So I think to have rough data, there's no difference to all other design assumptions you do, right, with requirements, and they are rough as well. So I think there's no big difference from a design perspective, but sometimes I think we overthink. We have to have too precise data actually, and could live with rough numbers and get some comparison just to decide what is a better solution. We don't have to find the perfect solution. We have to find the better one, right?
This was exactly one of the outcomes from the meeting also 2 days ago, and also to make sure that we do not calculate every single element in full detail, but have an overall rough estimate what are the most impacting components and what is not so much important. So there was an example about a cover, plastic cover, which has only minor impact to sustainability, while for this case, any steel processing manufacturing method might have a much bigger impact, but then again, taking into account that they're using green power already, so we need to make this bring it more on a solid basis, and this was the outcome. So to have the mix of rough estimations, sometimes you need to add manual data based on experience. Sometimes, of course, you get the data out of the material database. So everything has to be taken into account.
Yeah, the nice thing is you're now getting the validation with a real customer and with real data. Does this customer also have multiple manufacturing locations? Because I can imagine this is also could be a difference.
Yes, exactly. So the manufacturing location has an impact. So we basically discussed a lot about how to tailor and how to take into account different locations, different manufacturing methods, of course, but also different accuracies, and also have a kind of balancing between if I do have a transport compared to having some more sustainability on the material side. Is to be taken into account.
And then I'm curious, are those designers pushed to add the fourth dimension, or is it a bottom-up approach where they are encouraged to take the time for it and to experiment?
There's, first of all, thanks to remember the all wording about fourth dimension. I like it very much still. And what is interesting also, I mean, the customer itself prepares for the sustainability journey quite now. So they had already training on sustainability. The outcome was, and I was really impressed by this, that's a larger initiative. So we have a long-term roadmap already for sustainability. And the people we talked to and the customer, they have already received sustainability training. So we have not been establishing knowledge right from the scratch, but they have been prepared already. And that's also one of the outcomes. It's a journey, and it implies also looking at the people to make sure that they're aware and that we have a culture of sustainability.
Okay. Yeah, it's great to hear that. Really end to end, this connection starts to work on sustainability. It's not just an idea or some people that get an assignment and then have to fix it. It is end to end.
I was also very much impressed about the passion of these guys we had in the session there. So there was no one saying, okay, this is just a burden. All of them have been seriously interested to move this forward, and all of them have been hungry to start working. And also another outcome was basically we will use this customer where we estimate early already compared to a lifecycle assessment before production, and have some better insight about how we can adjust our estimation methods to fit the later scenario.
Okay. I don't know, Klaus, if you have the same observation, but I think the last year we see much more movement from companies now really acting. I mean, and this is probably also a good example.
Yeah. I think the challenge sometimes is that companies want to act on too many aspects of sustainability. So I really like the focus here to give the engineers and the designers the information they need to make design decisions. Very often the sustainability programs are focused on how do we improve our operations, or how do we save energy and stuff like this. So I really like to feed back the information to the engineers, to the operation, where people can actually make decisions, right?
Okay.
If I can maybe comment on that, this is exactly what we see on the market during last year. Much more customers really have design for sustainability inside their roadmaps. So this has improved significantly since last year. And I think that you named the mission, Klaus, very, very well. So we need to give the designers the relevant data to make the relevant choices, because there are like the three main drivers for the sustainability are, of course, regulations. That's one thing. Then the second thing is, of course, reducing emission levels for the net zero targets. And the third one is mainly related with eco-design requirements coming from European Union. So this is really the first step to provide the relevant data. And then when we start zooming into this area and breaking down the product from the footprint, from the environmental footprint perspective, we discovered that the really areas where PLM can help are material footprint, process footprint, and then trying to help as much as we can with the scope 3, which means with the buy parts. So those are the most difficult areas when we cannot have the direct emissions. And just commenting on what you have been discussing, Before, in environmental terms, you know it probably better than me, we have this primary data and secondary data. So if the customer is having much primary data, that's great. But it's often the case when this data is missing, and then we need to take into account environmental software or software that extended functionality with some sustainability parameters, like mentioned by Erik Ans's Grant AMI, which has by far very extensive list of materials, including alloys. So we just, you know, no customer will make a change from steel to aluminum. It's probably going to be between one alloy to another alloy. Okay. So then we need to use this data from environmental data sources.
Yeah.
So since you picked up the stick, Rafal, I also understood you are working much more closely now with the PTC partnership. Can you tell us something about that, what you're doing there?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a couple of areas there are a couple of areas where there are a couple of sustainability areas where PTC product management is developing new functionality. And in some of those areas, we are working together as development partner, especially the BOM rollups. So there will be a functionality that will allow rolling up the footprints from the component level to the sub-assembly and to the assembly level. That's one of that, especially that we are working together. That's not the only sustainability area. There are also a couple of others, but what we are trying to do as a systems integrator is really to close all the gaps, right? To connect all the dots and help in the areas that are very specific, but sometimes you need to have this to be able to calculate footprints precisely. One of that is, for example, if you want to calculate footprints for particular manufacturing processes, then what is really inspiring is that the CAD and PLM holds most of the information that is required to do that very precisely. If you speak about turning, to be able to calculate the footprint of turning, you need to calculate the removed mass first. That's the input for the environmental data source. And if you have in your product lifecycle management the dimensions, but also maybe you have the raw material block size together with the process plan, then you have all of the information needed to calculate that very precisely. And then this is also the starting point for additional things like, okay, what's the percentage for recyclability, et cetera, how much of that mass is actually being reused. That's the design for reuse, for example. So those are the very interesting areas. EcoPLM is not using CAD files. EcoPLM can, for example, we did a concept study when we are trying to analyze geometry with artificial intelligence, with computer vision engine, to try to understand, to help us with classifying that geometry to simplify the manufacturing processes associated with that. So we don't need the CAD data for that. We just have the 2D processes. So that's something I'm at the moment working on. So, that just to give you an example of the difference.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is we mentioned AI, huh? So we are top of the list. I was wondering, is your offering, is it a European offering, or could it be a global offering? Are you focusing on the typical processes in Europe and the approaches?
No, I think it's a global offering. This is a global offering. It's just, I think that Europe will be actually on the leading edge of that mission. Because here there is a little bit much more focus on sustainability, at least at the moment.
Right, yeah. I mean, there is some downturn due to all those elections in Europe that people are not so enthusiastic about it anymore. Klaus, anything from your side?
If you compare Europe with the US, for example, I think you're way ahead, and your elections will not turn this back. So, and this is the same in the US. So what we hear is, in few years ago, there were some discussion if we turn this back or not, but I think this is gone. So people are aware they have to do something. It's maybe differ from what they do and how intensive they are doing it. I think Europe is there ahead compared to the US, but you can also find in the US companies who are very focused on eco design and getting these climate issues right.
Okay. Especially if those companies are selling in Europe, right? Because ESPR regulation will cover every company that sells product in European Union. So that becomes a global, and CSRD is also a global regulation. So that become a global.
And we can see these impacts. I mean, it has not too much to do with design, but the deforestation regulation in Europe, what requires to basically report if you import soy or wood or palm oil into Europe, it affects also the American companies. So they have to do something in this area. And on the packaging side, for example, you can see in the US that companies, because of these kind of plastic tax in Europe, they try to get rid of plastic in their packaging. And if you do this for Europe, you do it at the end for everyone. So this has a big impact. Yeah.
There's also one learning from my end. There was a customer basically was really focusing on mechanical products mainly, and along our discussion, they acquired another company and suddenly discovered they need to comply with the battery passport regulations in 1 year right now. So that's why there's a typical example why I think it doesn't make sense too much focus on European market or whatever. So you should establish a general strategy. Otherwise, you might discover one day from now when another company is acquired that the regulations and demand is entirely different. So that's also one learning, and what I think is about think big, start small, but do not focus and assume something is in Europe different than US. I mean, this is...
Okay. And that brings me maybe to the announcement you made in the beginning, Erik. You talked about there is the Green PLM conference, and you're going to speak there. Can you tell us something more about this conference? What is a typical audience, and what should we expect there?
Yes, so let me share basically the announcement. I mean, that's the Green PLM conference, which is taking place in Berlin, organized by a local system integrator, MEDSP here locally. And that's the second time we have this conference. Last year we also presented. This year I have the pleasure to be the keynote speaker. And it's the exchange of different organizations, different companies, manufacturing companies, but also system integrators about their experience and about their approaches to look for this one. Last year I was very much impressed about having manufacturing company presentation about their challenges, their demand, about struggling with all the regulations, but also impressed about various system integrators, what they offered. And I'm looking very much forward to this year and sharing experiences.
And you would recommend people in that region to join the conference if they are...
Definitely. I mean, from my personal knowledge, it's one of the leading conferences dedicated only to this specific topic. Of course, with the background of manufacturing industry.
Okay, thanks. Talking about conferences, also next week I will be in Gothenburg for the PLM roadmap and the PDT conference, and also one of the topics I will discuss there is a long-term topic about the product service system, or the product as a service, that it's not only a change of behavior from product to experience, but it requires a digital infrastructure, data-driven ways of working. But I think also the biggest challenge I've been analyzing is the people, the mindset in the future. You will own nothing and you will still be happy. It was the quote on the World Economic Forum at that time. How do you see this movement? Also, I know Dave Duncan also spoke about it, that the product service system coming as a future development. Are you seeing this at your customers?
I can start. Interestingly, again, that's one learning from last year. We had a very intensive discussion, a skill discussion with one of the logistics company providers, and discuss about basically how can we take into account and how can we plan the disassembly of a product and take into account sustainability in this area. So from my understanding, to be honest, right now, this is a bit ahead in the future, but it will come. Also, this week's workshop, we discussed about circularity and take into account the 3R strategy about reuse, refurbish, and recycle, and take this into account. It's something which is coming. We have to do it. But again, fits into the same category. We have to make sure we have the basis for taking this into account. And my perception is still we have a recycle bomb come together with the M bomb in the beginning, but it's very early right now. Right now, we establish the basis, and it will come. I see also product as a service needs to be taken into account for the future. That might be rough. So, at your thoughts.
I think also we talk a lot about circular economy also in the future, and I think it's also very closely connected to modularity. This is what you see also more and more in companies. Are you also coaching your customers on modularity? Do you take it into account?
I had a call today with a larger machine supplier about establishing modularity and product families, exactly in how to structure the product. Mm-hmm. But based also on my experience, we have to be aware that we have mostly product structures historically grown. And I had also customer examples where we investigated how to introduce product families and modularization. But then at the end, we had to stop because it was too much effort for the company to reorganize the product structure. To be done carefully, that's mine. But it's also one of our key areas.
Yeah, because initially, I think modularity was business driven, and now if you have all those circular economy loops, the repairability, the upgradability, you need to have this approach, and it becomes more and more, at least in my world, a visible topic to discuss.
And but it's not the question how you then decide on what is actually sustainable and not sustainable, even more complex.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I have a nice slide on that. Why should we like more complexity? From linear to systems thinking, and the answer is quite simple. And I will say it next week. We have only one Earth. So far, we haven't discovered 4 Earths where we can grasp our materials from. And maybe my generation won't feel the pain, but it will come. We see it happening. So the why is, for me, already answered.
Yeah, and there are much many companies committing to the SBTi targets, which is very good, right? Because we need to kind of align science-based on the trajectory towards net zero in 2050. Right. So to keep the 1.5 degree of global warming. So yeah.
So Erik, you said this is a journey. Maybe I can come back to your customer example. When do you think this journey will have actually an impact? So I understand that's a question we have in our projects very often, that we collect data and we analyze data and we report, but on a certain point, people want to see, when does this actually have an effect? What do you think in your project? When will this have an impact? When can we see the first eco design from your customer?
I mean, for this specific customer example, the impact is very clear and there's a clear timeline behind this. So honestly, we start right now the MVP phase and expect to have this in production along the next year. That's very clear, but starting with small examples. So starting impact is coming immediately right now within a month. On the other hand, what I learned about, take the example about this battery passport, which is urgently required, which means the impact has to happen again over the next year or next 2 years. So, but I assume that the impact will start next year for the specific customer, and it will grow over the time and become more visible.
Yeah, I also
do they have an average design cycle? So do you know how long this will take to then create an eco design product for them? Is it a year or?
Yeah, for this case, I think the product development cycle is about 6 months in this range. So from a starting order, and basically it's an OEM, and they have to provide immediate information. So I think it's about half a year when it starts.
Customers are at a very different level of their design for sustainability journey. It's very interesting, for example, to see some of the customers when they have a lot of products LCA'd already, they know the footprint. But for example, what they want to do is design all of the new products with the eco design principles. Mm-hmm. So that's very nice approach. And this is starting, in my opinion, beginning of next year. Because beginning of next year is really when CSRD regulation is effective in Europe. So we need to put much pressure on, measuring the footprints. That's one thing, but also we need to prepare for the eco design regulation, or it's digital product passport or battery passports. That's something we need to be prepared for 2026 or 7. Battery passports end of 26, digital product passport 27. So I think we need to start soon.
Okay.
Half a year. Yeah. And that's, by the way, if I can mention that, because we have been also analyzing the digital product or battery passports. And we are a member of IDTA, Industrial Digital Twin Association. And there is a very nice standard coming out of that organization, which is Administrative Asset Shell, which also that is a proposal for the digital product passport. So this is something we definitely want to be looking into, because in the past we built the proof of concept of the repository to hold the digital identity that was based on one of the blockchain technologies, because blockchain is like European Commission recommended technology for those passports, due to the fact that it's they call it tamper-proof, so you cannot edit this. It will be verified. So this is one of the areas when we also are involved a lot, and we see how PLM can be extended in that area to help provide the input for the digital product passports, right? Because digital product passports will actually be more related with physical products than digital products, but we need to provide the input for that, and that's also another very interesting area.
Yeah. So in one way we are looking forward what is all coming. I think we can conclude that at least comparing to where we were 1 year ago, we are much more practical now. It's less theoretical. We have examples. Things are happening, and maybe given the time, is there one final message for the next year to focus on? I'll start with you, Erik.
So my words, basically, it's, again, think big, start small, and let's start small, make it happen for the next year. Don't think about elevation to some beautiful concepts, make it happen in the product development environment, really concrete. So it's not be perfect, but according to the 120%, 80% rule, let's start and let's do it.
Okay. Rafal?
Yes, the most exciting sentence that I have heard in my sustainability journey this year was sustainability needs to go beyond marketing. And I believe that this is what we are doing at the moment.
Okay. And maybe since we do a roundup, Klaus, what would be your...
No, there's nothing to add to Rafal's quote, so sorry for that.
Okay.
I like this.
It was good.
Since I've been on the topic a lot at this moment, I would say get connected. And with connected, I mean digitally connected. Because try to move away from your document-driven PLM infrastructures.
Exactly. And that's sustainability. It's a great driver for putting a lot of more into PLM. And I'm personally very thrilled about how this can expand towards supply chain, because this is really where is the big question mark. And, we are looking at the ways to engage suppliers more, et cetera, et cetera. So those are very interesting topics. That's why I really like the sustainability journey.
Okay.
So one quote I can provide from one of our customers is, she said, PLM, sustainability makes PLM sexy again.
That's a good one to end with, or a leading quote even. Thanks, Klaus. So, Erik, Rafal, thank you for your contribution. I think, we saw a lot of progress in this area, and success with your journey, and see you soon in another episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks. Bye.